Welcome into the Irish NFL show. We are just over 1 week away from one of the biggest events of the off-season NFL calendar. That is the NFL draft, which will be taking place in Kansas City. The Sky Sports coverage here will be broadcasted live via NFL Network throughout the course of the 3 days. And one man who's going to be heavily involved in all that action, our NFL Network insider, third time on the Irish NFL show, in Rapoport. You're very welcome back.
What's going on, guys? How are you?
We're good. Yeah, good. All well in Dublin. And look, I suppose we have to start with the news that you kind of revealed to the world earlier today, that the 49ers were fielding calls for Trey Lance, not making them, but fielding them. And I suppose, we're reminded that, last year on draft night, we saw A.J. Brown get traded. We saw Hollywood Brown get traded. Obviously a week to go at this point, given, and I know the Brock Purdy injury situation is there, but with Sam Darnold in situ, if they were to get the right offer, could we see something happen on draft night, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, it feels less likely that we'd see something on draft night, mainly because, if you're the 49ers, like let's say you do trade Trey Lance. Well, it brings up two questions. One, a lot of teams go into training camp with three quarterbacks. Do they draft one? And if they don't have one, do other teams say, all right, well, they definitely have to draft one, so we're going to trade over them? Like, does it affect their draft position? That's one. The other thing is, do they know for sure that Brock Purdy is going to be ready? If Brock Purdy might not be ready, then they really can't trade Trey Lance because, probably he'd be their backup, but maybe he plays well enough to be their starter. There certainly is a possibility there. So I would be surprised if they do anything before they know for 100% sure, is Brock Purdy going to be back on the field on time?
Ian, over the course of the last week, the Texans have kind of moved away, distanced themselves from potentially taking a quarterback. The general consensus are not 100% bought into taking a quarterback at number 2, because I suppose with the news that Bryce Young is likely now to be the number 1 pick. Is it kind of are they playing a game in terms of trying to get someone potentially to move up because they're potentially comfortable with Anthony Richardson if they were to move down a couple of slots and try stockpile, or do you just feel that D'Amico Ryan's being the defensive mind that he is coming from the Niners, that he would be comfortable taking someone the likes of Will Anderson or potentially even Jalen Carter if they're still comfortable with that player?
Well, it is interesting because, I've heard the rumors too. A lot of people around the league, coaches, general managers, evaluators, think the Texans are not going to take a quarterback in number 2. I just can't figure out where that comes from. I really can't. I know they took a hard look at all the quarterbacks. It does sound like C.J. Stroud is someone they like. The Texans are not generally a leaky organization. They're not generally someone who, their plans before they happen. Nick Caserio, former member of the Patriots organization, is, keeps his cards close to the vest and really doesn't talk to a lot of people about his plans. So where's all this coming from? And are we to believe that one of the more secretive organizations has just draft plans out for everyone to know? It really makes me wonder, what actually is going on here? It's possible that they don't take a quarterback. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we need to figure out where this information is coming from and how reliable it actually is, because I still do think there's a chance or maybe even a good possibility that it's quarterback at number 2.
Ian, one of the big spenders in free agency were the Denver Broncos. And I saw a stat earlier today that between George Payton and Sean Payton, they have made 32 draft day trades. George obviously tends to like to acquire picks. Sean very often tends to move up the board. Any idea what the Broncos might get up to next week?
Well, it's tough because they don't have a first round pick. They don't have early picks, and they need a build. So that's why when you heard, people discuss, well, maybe, Courtland Sutton could be traded. Maybe Jerry Jeudy could be traded. You heard all of these things. Excuse me. A lot of reason why was they need picks. They have not been able to move or unload anyone. We'll see next week if they get closer to doing that. Otherwise, I think, probably more likely you'd see them trade back just to acquire more picks and try to build out this roster in as efficient but also as cheap a way as possible.
Ian Drew Rosenhaus has been quite adamant over the course of the last week that don't come calling if you're outside of the top 10 because Jalen Carter is 100% going in the top 10, and he wouldn't be sending him into the green room next week unless he had assurances from certain teams that they will pick him. Are you convinced that he's definitely going top 10? You're going to get the sense that, I know he's visiting the Falcons today. Is that the cutoff at the 8 point potentially?
I don't know about that, but I do believe, not just based on what Drew Rosenhaus said, but based on the information I've gotten, I do believe that Jalen Carter will go in the top 10. I do believe that is accurate. We'll see who ends up taking him, but he's got plenty of backstops because he's such a good player. Seattle could take him at 5. Detroit could take him after that. The Falcons could take him, right? The Raiders, I could see taking him as well. They're at 7. The Bears have spent a lot of time on him, real lot of time on him. The Eagles, they have an embarrassment of riches, but, and took a defensive lineman last year, but maybe they say, we're just going to make sure that position is an absolute strength, and we're going to get the most talented player in the draft at 10. There's a lot of landing spots in the top 10, certainly more than enough for him. Even though he's got the off-the-field issues, I do believe that you will see him likely go in the top 10.
Ian, obviously, one of the big stories over the past couple of days been that Jalen Hurts contract. Mm-hmm. The piece I'm interested in is maybe around Howie, and we constantly talk about the evolution of the game, the evolution of the quarterback position. Do we need to start talking about the evolution of the general manager position and maybe how Howie and Omar Khan with the Steelers, guys who come from maybe not the traditional scouting background? It feels like, Howie is out there every year. They're making moves, and he's built 2 great sides now.
Yeah, there's 2 big things for a general manager. One is obviously you have to be good at talent evaluation and talent procurement, which you can do yourself, or you can employ the best personnel staff you possibly can. The other part of it is you have to run the business of the football team. You are the general manager of the football team. You manage the football team. And that's obviously Howie Roseman's specialty. He's great at trades. He's great at contracts. They do a lot of good, smart contracts really early to save them money in the long term. I've never understood why the GM had to be like the head scout. It should be like the top person to run this business and hire other people who are really good and smart. That does seem to be the way the Eagles have done it. And they've won a Super Bowl. They've been to a Super Bowl. I think they have a pretty good track record. And, it does make you think maybe more people should be following their lead.
Ian, a couple of years ago, the Rams obviously won the Super Bowl, and for the year or 2 leading up to that, they seem to be all in terms of trying to make trades, get the players in to, I suppose, put themselves in that position to finally win the Lombardi. But things have unraveled very quickly, probably not at the extent in which fans and people would have thought in terms of how quickly things have changed. And Allen Robinson trade yesterday, for example, just to essentially save $5 million, nothing really in return in terms of picks. And we saw Jalen Ramsey go to get him off the cap. Is there more players to come, bigger names potentially? I know there's a lot of talk around Matthew Stafford, not necessarily saying they're going to get moved on, but it's a precarious time for Rams fans.
It is, and I think, the the Allen Robinson deal was a cautionary tale. He was not in the original plans in free agency. They had some money to spend. He was available, and they ended up doing, a really big contract for him that was one of the worst contracts they've done. And, they are having obviously a reset now organizationally. I don't know, I don't get the sense there's a lot more to come. They've dumped everything they can. They don't have a lot of players on the roster. They really don't. They're going to end up saving some money and resetting a little bit. And they won a Super Bowl, so it's all worth it. Definitely worth it. But it really does make you kind of think again about going all in, putting all your chips in the middle, signing everyone, trading for everyone, paying everyone. There is a second part of that, which is you have to kind of collect yourself and get your feet under you. And that process is not always that enjoyable.
Ian, we saw Von Miller mention today that there might be, he's heard murmurings of a potential mega move in the offing. Are you hearing anything like that?
Well, I assume he means DeAndre Hopkins. He's spoken publicly about he's heard DeAndre Hopkins wants to go to the Bills. Hopkins was posted on Instagram of him singing Buffalo Soldier, the great Bob Marley song. Is it possible? I guess it's possible. Well, there's a lot that has to be worked out for that trade to even be a consideration. There's the compensation. There's the DeAndre Hopkins contract adjustment. I do believe there would, have to be an adjustment. How much of an adjustment would he be willing to do? I mean, Odell Beckham Jr., certainly comparable, signed for $15 million. That should probably be the price for DeAndre Hopkins. Are they willing to give that to him? Like, there's a lot more questions than answers, and I don't know that anything is imminent, but that's my guess is that's kind of who he's insinuating.
Ian, last year we saw the Lions jump from 32 up to 12, I believe, in the first round to take the wide receiver. And we've seen over the course of the last few months, the Panthers have moved up to 1. We've seen previous years where teams make big jumps. Do you ever see, not asking to give us any particular team, but do you ever see a team making a big jump on the night of the draft? Is there a sense that something big is happening?
Yeah, I mean, this would be, one of the drafts you might see some big moves because there seems to be, a group of premium players and then maybe a lot of players in the middle, like a lot of players from 12 to 45 are all similar, but those top guys are really strong. So, when there's just like a clump of guys who are head and shoulders above everyone else, sometimes you get a lot of trades. Sometimes you get teams saying, this is the only premium player I could get. I'm going to trade up for him, and I'm not worried about anything else. So I do think this is a draft where you could get some big-time trades. It's a little early before we know who that actually is, but I do think you could see it.
With the Hurts deal now being done, obviously, look, all eyes turn to Burrow and to Herbert. When do you get any sense of when those deals are they much more likely to be later in the summer if they are to get done in?
Yeah, I have a hard time imagining Joe Burrow is going to go quick. I mean, his agent, Brian Aralt, always takes his time, is always one of the last people to do a deal, always takes it right to the edge. I would expect that to be similar. And I don't get the sense that the Chargers and Justin Herbert are really off the ground either. So, there was the Jalen Hurts deal. It was a good deal. It was a smart deal. I think there was wins on both sides. But it might be the only QB deal we see for a while, which is okay. There's really not a deadline. It's really training camp a lot of times where these things end up happening.
Ian, last week, Buda Baker announced publicly that he wanted to trade from the Cards. Do you see it as a strategic move to try to get a trade this side of the draft, or do you think this is one that could rumble into the summer leading into training camp?
Yeah, I think it'll linger because I don't get the sense the Cardinals want to trade Buda Baker at all. I mean, he is one of the linchpins of their defense. He's one of the rocks of their locker room. He's a great player. He's a good person. He wants more money. And I think it's been hard. It's been hard. Like, being a member of the Cardinals organization is challenging. They have been through a lot. There's a lot of bad headlines. They have a new coach. They have a new GM. They lost last year. And Buda Baker's done everything right. So I get his frustration. It's really on Jonathan Gannon, the new coach, to kind of win him over and be like, I'm going to make sure that you're on my side and we're going to do everything the right way. That has not happened yet, but I imagine that is in progress because, if you're the Cardinals, you want to keep really good players. That is what you want to do.
Ian, I have to ask you a separate question, not related to NFL. Ireland is a country which loves horse racing, and every year a number of Irish horses come over for the Breeders' Cup. It's in Santa Anita this year. I know you've got a fondness now, outside of the Mets, you've got a fondness for horse racing now, 2 horses. Are we going to see these 2 horses go up against the Irish in November in the Breeders'?
That I don't know. I'm focusing one race at a time. Jace's Road, which is one of our horses, is in the mix for the Kentucky Derby. We don't know for sure if he's going to get in there. We're in really fast with the Louisiana Derby. So, I am, and it's the same, it's the same outfit that had Flightline a couple years back. So I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic, but after the Derby, I don't know. I'm just going to take it one race at a time and hope all goes well.
Enjoyable experience so far, I'd imagine.
It's the best. I mean, horse racing is the best. I love it so much. And, right after the draft, we go to the Kentucky Derby, and that's just fantastic. So I can't wait.
Ian, we want to thank you for taking the time to join us. A pleasure as always to chat to you, and wish you continued success in your career, and particularly over the next week, which we are sure will be very busy.
I'm sure it'll be crazy. Thank you, guys. Always fun talking to you guys.